Okay, we're now here with Drew Phelps. He's running for state assembly in the 26th district. Drew, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and your campaign?
Oh, well, thank you for that, Roger. Thank you, everybody tuning in. Just a little bit about me. I am fourth generation from our district, Assembly District 26. Was born and raised in Tulare, California, and spent my whole life here outside of some time I spent working in Sacramento. Got a lot of experience working for a couple of our local legislators, both former Assemblywoman Connie Conway, also worked for State Senator Andy Vidak when he was in office, and got a lot of experience working on the legislative process, bringing funding back to our district. I also saw in my time, particularly in Senator Vidak's office, and then afterwards, as I moved into the nonprofit sector, I worked for a local family resource center here in Tulare, and then for the last 4 years have been working for a local home builder as the senior policy analyst, where I work with folks in Sacramento every single day. And so really in that time, both in my current job and in the time I spent in Sacramento, I saw very clearly that our district isn't being represented in the way that it deserves, that we can do a lot better in terms of having our voice heard and having really our most basic needs addressed. And so I had that kind of swirling in the back of my mind. I knew that we could do a lot better in this district, but at the same time, I didn't necessarily at that time feel the call to run for this position specifically, even though state government is really my main experience, what I know best. What really personally got me involved in this race was some work I did here in Tulare in addition to my job, which was with a group called Citizens for Hospital Accountability. Just a really short background, we have a hospital here in Tulare. It is a district hospital, which means it is publicly owned. And so we had a management group at the time, and this is beginning, our citizens group first started organizing at the beginning of 2016. And there was, from our perspective, a lot of corruption happening at the hospital, a management group that was there that was really not taking the best interests of our community to heart and was in it to enrich themselves. We've since then, after our campaign, which lasted 2 years from the beginning of 2016 toward the end of 2018, we were able to defeat a very unwise bond measure. We also replaced the whole hospital board and were able to remove that management group. And within the past few months, after a very lengthy district attorney investigation, we saw that management group, 3 of their top C-suite executives, both their CEO, CFO, and a former top lawyer, all been charged collectively with over 80 felonies. And so really, we were very rewarded in that work. The hospital went through a lot of tough times. But like I said, that is what got me personally involved in this race, because from the very beginning, even starting in 2015, my opponent was never on our side, even though it was overwhelmingly obvious that we were in the right and striving for the best for the community. And so even beginning in 2015, like I said, some community members approached him and asked if he would request a state audit of the hospital's finances. And it's been well documented in local newspapers that his response to that question was, I can't do that because I owe Dr. Benzivi, the CEO at the time of the hospital, who's since been charged with 40 felonies just by himself. He said, I can't do that because I owe Dr. Benzivi a favor. Throughout the whole process, we never got the support of my opponent. And so really that's where I felt the personal call. Not only are we just not being represented effectively, we're also actively being hurt by our representation's leadership, because he's just picking the wrong sides of issues and being a very poor representative for our district. And so since then, obviously, been campaigning really hard. I've learned so much in terms of the issues of this district, many of which I was already aware of, but many I've become enlightened on. And so the top 3 priorities for me are really water. This district, water is our lifeblood. And so that includes both on the agricultural side, the fact that we do have such a need, whether it's continued Delta solutions, working to maintain the environment while also freeing up more water for our ag folks, whether it's more surface water storage solutions, improvements to conveyance, the list goes on and on. But that, along with the fact that we have so many folks in this district that lack access to clean drinking water in their own homes, really a disgrace, in my opinion, in this state where we do have such a powerful economy, yet we can't provide the most basic quality of life needs for our folks. And so much of that comes back to our current representation. So really, those are my two top priorities, because like I say, for us here in the 26th district, water is really the key. Beyond that, I'm also really passionate about access to healthcare. We have such a shortage of doctors and nurses in this community. And so the combination of expanding an existing residency program that we have here at our one of our local hospitals, Kauai Delta, being able to expand that, attract more doctors to our area through that program, as well as creating and expanding pathway programs for local students who are interested in those professions, that they may be able to work their way up, get the education they need here locally while staying local and eventually practicing locally here within the community. And then last but not least, vocational education. Incredibly important to me as well. I think too many of our school districts, because the funding just isn't there, have gotten away from those programs. And so I would love to see it start across the board as early as middle school, getting kids interested in those sorts of professions, and would love to see really my experience, coming from both the public sector as well as the private sector. I would love to see greater partnership between those two when it comes to our vocational ed, getting students trained, seeing if those are jobs that they would be interested in, because we know that there are so many great jobs you can get without a four-year degree. But then beyond that, moving on into the workforce for those folks already out there. We know whether it's unforeseen occurrences like coronavirus, whether it's something that we do see coming very quickly like automation, we know that there are so many things coming up that, especially here in the 26th district, are going to be pushing a lot of folks out of their jobs. And so being proactive about putting programs in place to be able to get those folks retrained and back out into the workforce. And once again, I would love to see a huge partnership with the private sector. I know there used to be programs where in terms of creating apprenticeships and partnerships with the private sector, those folks who participated in those programs would get tax breaks and would eventually even then end up hiring on those folks who were their apprentices as full-time employees. So would love to see more partnership there, more opportunity for growth when it comes to building for the economy of the future. And that's really a huge key in this district as well, where we do see such high levels of folks being susceptible to automation. So those are just a few of the quick keys for me. This district is a very important one because we just have been neglected for so long. There is so much potential here when it comes to furthering our agricultural economy, expanding beyond that and diversifying with new technological sectors. But really am so focused on just meeting the basic quality of life needs for our folks that in my position are progressive issues, but really should be nonpartisan, bipartisan, whatever you want to call it, because it's just so simple, just things that have been ignored or gone unrepresented for so long. And so I'm really looking at those things that affect all of us every single day. I ask that if you are interested in our campaign and looking more into those issues, you visit our website, which is really simple. It's just drewphelps.com. We are also active on social media. And once again, I thank you so much all for taking the time to listen.
Thanks, Drew. I have a quick one. You're down there in the heart of agricultural country. Has that, and it looks like you're coming from an office. It's a luxury we don't get here in Santa Clara County. Has your area been particularly hard hit by COVID and by the fires and the things that are going on? And if so, is the state doing enough to help out?
So on both fronts, when it comes to COVID, I think the state has done a great job. We were particularly hard hit here in Tulare County. The only thing that I would have liked to see improved in the immediate response was a better state presence when it comes to our nursing homes. That was where we saw a large number of cases as well as casualties, unfortunately, due to COVID. And many of those nursing homes were under the purview of the state. And so granting better oversight to those, making sure that they were better prepared when it comes to things like PPE, and just having plans in place for outbreaks like COVID is really important to me. But then also looking further into the future, being able to provide more funding for our folks in the small business sector, because we know that they're going to be saddled with heavy costs, as well as our school districts. Those are not easy burdens to bear when it comes to granting access to further PPE, when it comes to having to disinfect after every single class. And so coming up with programs to be able to address those funding potential shortfalls is really important to me as well. On the wildfire front, that was an issue that we've also faced pretty severely here in the district. We had the SQF complex fire that burned a large number of acreage, had a lot of firefighters out there working day and night to stop it, and I'm so thankful to them. But the bottom line for me when it comes to wildfires is actually twofold. You always hear the argument, is it climate change or is it forest management? And I don't see why we can't have both. I totally am a believer in climate change. I think California has done a great job toward stepping up their programs and setting really lofty goals to address climate change and be an example for others. We know that because of the longer, drier summers we've had, a greater drying out, I guess, of the trees and the leaf litter on the forest floor. And we also, because of longer, or I should say warmer winters, have had a vast expansion and reproduction of the bark beetles that are killing so many trees. And so addressing or continuing to address climate change is key, but at the same time, we do need, particularly in those areas where we have human life and folks, whether it's recreation or just everyday life in those areas, to be able to better manage our forests and cooperate with our federal government that also manages so much of those lands. To be able to, whether it's getting rid of that leaf litter, whether it's thinning out some of those dead trees, just like I say, combining both the climate change policy as well as creating better forest management. I would love to see the state step into that void.
Okay, well, thanks very much. Thanks for joining us. Drew Phelps, 26th District.
Thank you so much, Roger, and everybody else for tuning in.